Hey, happy Thursday night, my friends. Drinking some tea tonight, some ginger turmeric tea, and this cool little cup that my friend Jane sent to me from Australia with a little Australian quokka. Hey, man, thanks for coming back. I've got a tale tonight that's a part of my video book, but it's not metal or rock or punk. It's more folk rock. It's actually about Arlo Guthrie and how I got a chance to hang out with him for a short time and see him perform. And I'm a big fan of folk rock. When I started getting into rock and roll back when I was a wee little lad, basically I went through all the phases of studying music in the rock and roll genre, kind of beginning with folk rock, and before that Irish, music and Western music and hillbilly music and mountain music and all these different genres that led up to like folk rock being formed. And of course, the famous Woody Guthrie, father of Arlo Guthrie, became famous when he wrote, This Land Is Your Land. He started out as a radio guy, Woody Guthrie, but his music went on to inspire artists and activists forever. And Pete Seeger kept the music alive when Woody passed away. And of course, Arlo Guthrie's been performing for a long time, man. Of course, he got very famous too for performing at the Woodstock Music Festival in the summer of 1969. Well-documented stuff. Arlo rocks. I love Arlo Guthrie. As a songwriter, as a human being, as a humanitarian, the guy's awesome. So if you guys would take a minute to subscribe to the channel, that would be great. If you're a fan of Arlo, let me know in the comments below. Maybe give the video a thumbs up at the end if you like it, and share if you feel like it. So it was pretty cool, man. Arlo Guthrie comes to Peoria, Illinois, where I was residing. My girlfriend at the time was actually working at the Civic Center. I don't think she had anything to do with me getting the ticket. However, I could be wrong. But I got a ticket by myself. I believe she was working that night. And I got one of those cool balcony seats in the Peoria Civic Center Theater. This place only holds 2,000 or 3,000 people. It's a really cool theater with a nice setting inside. And they have these great balcony seats on the sides, on the upper parts that kind of scale on the sides of the stage. Really cool. I remember looking down and the stage was to my left, down there. So I'm on the side in this dark little balcony, and Arlo Guthrie comes out and performs. And I don't have the exact set list, I can tell you that. But I did get his average set list, and I did record the show that night, which don't have the recording anymore. But I remember about 3/4 of the songs that were played that night. I will tell you this. Arlo did not perform Alice's Restaurant. As a matter of fact, he kind of removed it from his set list in the late 70s, from his regular repertoire, I should say. I know he's performed it since then, of course. But on the night I saw him, pretty darn positive there was no Alice's Restaurant. But the songs that were played were awesome. He did Do Re Mi, a Woody Guthrie song, to open the show. Down on the American Farm was the song he was doing on that tour. Pretty Boy Floyd, which is a great tune, Woody Guthrie, about the American gangster. Key to the Highway, Freight Train, Gates of Eden. How many Arlo fans out there watching this, man? Oh Moon, Slow Boat. These were songs. Ocean Crossing. And then he did a bunch of songs that I was familiar with and I do remember singing along with. And man, that was a great show. Arlo combined humor, Americana, and folk music all together into this one beautiful thing, man. And there's no one like Arlo Guthrie. He actually broke into City of New Orleans. And man, what a classic Arlo Guthrie tune, man. Good morning, America. How are you? Yeah, that's a great one. City of New Orleans. And then he did, of course, the Motorcycle Song, a classic Arlo Guthrie song about a guy that doesn't want a pickle. He just wants to ride his motorcycle. Anyway, it's a classic, the Motorcycle Song. Coming into Los Angeles. That's one of my favorites. And I remember him doing that from the famous Woodstock Music Festival movie. You see Arlo up there singing, coming into Los Angeles, bringing in a couple of keys. Don't touch my bags if you please, Mr. Customs Man. Yeah, I love Arlo, man. That was a great tune. Last Train, he also performed on that tour. I don't want a bunny wunny. Total Arlo. Garden Song. And then he did, of course, an homage to his father at the show, which was amazing. At the end of the show, Arlo Guthrie performed with his band, This Land Is Your Land, which was amazing. Sing along. He had everybody going, talking about his dad. And then he did Will the Circle Be Unbroken, which I think was made famous by the Carter family, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, Amazing Grace, the famous gospel, everyone knows Amazing Grace, right? So yeah, he did Amazing Grace, and I remember that was gave me goosebumps. I remember that night because that was the end of the show, and I was like, wow, all these classics. He's Woody, the Carter Family, Amazing Grace. It was just kind of cool, kind of like being in an Arlo Guthrie folk rock church. And shout out to Radha Krishna Yoga. I had to wear the martial arts and yoga people that I know, friends, former teachers of ours actually in yoga, but they specialize in martial arts. So shout out to Hariom and Nina Radha Krishna, and they're in Wisconsin. I just had to sport the shirt from when they were here in Ashland, Oregon. So hey man, Arlo Guthrie, about just 3 months after I saw him perform, played at the famous Farm Aid in Austin, Texas in 1986. Now I'm going to tell you about meeting Arlo Guthrie. After the show was over, I actually left the Civic Center Theater right at the very tail end of Amazing Grace because I knew where Arlo Guthrie was going to come out, and I thought, you know what? No one ever goes outside the Civic Center Theater back door. But I know where it's at because I had been, in the music business and seeing concerts forever, and I kind of knew. So I went back there and I stood by that door, and I'm telling you, 5 minutes later, Arlo came out by himself, and he was going to get a breath of fresh air for 10 or 15 minutes until the band started coming out and packing up to go to the next town, right? So there I am, just me and Arlo, and I'm wearing my little Iron Maiden wristband. Yep, it said Iron Maiden. It was on leather that I ordered from England. I had that thing since like the early 80s. But I had the Iron Maiden wristband on, right? It's made of leather. It's got these like semi-spike studded kind of deal. And it was really cool. But I had other stuff on my arms. I always wear my jewelry, always have. Well, Arlo looks down and after we start talking, and he says, "Oh, Iron Maiden, huh?" And I go, "Yeah, I know. I'm a metalhead punk rock and roll guy, but I'm also a big folk rock guy. Dylan, Baez, Peter, Paul, and Mary, the Byrds, Graham Parsons. Anyway, Joni Mitchell, I could just go on and on and on and on, Mama Cass. Anyway, he starts talking to me about music. And he goes, "Well, you get along with my son real well." And I didn't know, even though I just got done watching the band play with Guthrie on stage, that his son, Abe, was in the band. I didn't know that. He was his bass player, and he'd been in the band since the early 80s sometime. But yeah, I made little notes to make sure I didn't get anything wrong. Abe actually played keyboards and bass for his dad, and Arlo Guthrie has 3 daughters that are also musicians. So he tells me, "Yeah, you'd get along with my son Abe. He actually wears spikes and studs on stage," and I thought he was ribbing me because Arlo, makes jokes a lot. He goes, "No, I'm not kidding. He really does." And it turns out I did a little research before doing this video, and his son Abe was known for coming on with spikes and studs and just being himself, and Arlo was totally cool with that. And he said, it wasn't his thing, like that Iron Maiden music, but it was his son's, and that was cool with him. And then the thing I remember the most about what Arlo Guthrie said to me, because I said, "Hey, Arlo, what was Woodstock really like?" And, because you read all this stuff about it, I thought, I'm going to ask a guy that was at Woodstock. And you know what he said? He said it was way overrated. It's been misrepresented, and it wasn't how it was. I go, "How was it?" He said, "Well, there was mud up to my waist. It was raining. It was, miserable. It was completely hard to have any kind of good time at all." And I'm like, "Really? So it wasn't that fun?" He goes, "It was a bummer." He said, "Except for performing, really, it was just really a kind of a nightmare." But not in a negative way. He said it in his Arlo way. But I was, wow, really? I remember him describing that mud. And then what he said to me next was something I'll never forget. He said to me, "But I'll tell you this, I got to spend the night in Janis Joplin's tent." So that was, and I'm like, whoa. So he wasn't exactly kissing and telling, but he totally was kissing and telling. But he said nothing else about it. I knew better than to, not be more than a gentleman or whatever and not try to ask for more details. But that was enough. I spent the night in Janis Joplin's tent. Wow, Arlo, that was cool. So we talked for a while, maybe 15 minutes, and then the back door opened and people started filing out, and I thought, well, I'm going to get out of here. And the tape I made that night is long gone in the 2020 Alameda fires. But hey, man, thanks for listening to my story about meeting Arlo Guthrie. And, I got to say, every Thanksgiving, I always watch Alice's Restaurant, a great film that was released in 1969. I bet you I'm not the only one that's out there that watches that on Thanksgiving every year. Anyone else do that? that, man, let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for listening to my tale about ARLO Guthrie. And I'll catch you on the next video, my friends. Rock and roll, or well, stay folk, man. Cheers. Rock and roll.